The Miami Dolphins have had a great free agency, but they still have some holes on the roster. I'm Connor from the Dolphins Dive, and I'm going to break down the Miami Dolphins' top remaining needs and some free agents they can look to pursue to fill those needs. So I'm going to start with the least important positions of need and then finish with the most important positions of need. An honorable mention that I was going to put, and then I realized I think the Dolphins are actually pretty solid at this position, is backup left tackle. The reason I'm kind of apprehensive about it though is Keon Smith did show some promise last season, so I think you can feel confident with him being your backup left tackle for Tron Armstead, as well as you have the potential draft to fill that need. But starting with the first position, I have backup edge. Obviously, the Dolphins have added Shaq Barrett, which I think is a great start, but I think one more edge to really help bolster that group would be very beneficial. Once again, this is something that you could potentially draft depending on how the Dolphins handle the rest of free agency, because the Dolphins would have a chance to take a pretty solid edge in the first round. But some names to look out for in free agency, starting with Randy Gregory, who had a bad season, ended up getting cut by the Broncos, went to the 49ers, played a role. Once again, I'm not looking for a superstar, especially with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. You're really just looking for people to hold their own until those guys get healthy and then be able to provide rotational value to the group. So I think he could do that. Tyus Bowser is another name from Baltimore. I don't really know much about him, but the Baltimore tie to our defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver, I saw that and thought that it might be an option for the Dolphins. A higher end guy, I do not see this happening, nor would I want Chris Greer to pursue this option, but he is out there. Jadeveon Clowney. Spending the amount of money we did on Shaq Barrett, you have your third guy. I don't want to see the Dolphins pay top dollar for Jadeveon, but you never know, but just someone to look out for. And then this last option, also in the kind of edge rusher I'm looking for, I see the Dolphins looking to have their edge rushers really be standing up in 2-point stances and running more of a 3-4. Obviously, Anthony Weaver plans to be versatile, but based off that signing, I'm looking mainly at outside linebacker. So Bud Dupree, who's been all over the league, still kind of productive though. He was in Atlanta last year and put up 6.5 sacks, so a potential name to look out for to add to the rotation, and he should be very cheap. Now on to the next position of need is the safety position. The Dolphins have two very good safeties in Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland, but you would look to add a third safety, especially in this defense where Weaver previously in Baltimore, they ran a lot of 3 safety packages, so you assume the Dolphins are going to look to do the same, especially with Poyer being old and having some injuries. At minimum, you want a backup safety, if not a third safety that you plan to use in those packages. And there's so many good safeties still on the market, and that goes to show positional value at its core. So I'm going to list off a bunch of very good players that you can probably get for cheap, starting with Justin Simmons, obviously an former All-Pro with the Denver Broncos. He's still out there and shouldn't cost too much money. Along those same lines, Quandre Diggs, former Seahawk, very good safety still out there. Next, also a Seahawk, a very controversial Jamal Adams. And I know what a lot of people are going to comment, and I understand. Jamal Adams is very unique. He's got tremendous athleticism, but he has struggled mightily. Has dealt with some injuries. He struggles in coverage, specifically man coverage, but especially depending on how Weaver plans to use this defense, if Jamal Adams is your third safety and he's more of a box guy and you use him to his skill sets, especially for the price tag, it might be an interesting signing. You're talking about having him as a box safety, have him be versatile, use his ability to run and hit and blitz. Like, if you use his skill set correctly, it could be a good signing. Obviously, you cannot ask him to be a deep safety that's going to have to cover a lot. Use him as like your nickel linebacker, and I think he could be good, especially for the price tag. The next guy on this list, you could look to reunite him with Jordan Poyer, and that is Micah Hyde. How hilarious would that be if our safety core was Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, and Javon Holland? That'd be a pretty nasty group, but two of those guys would be very old. Adrian Amos, another guy who's been all around the league, but he's been productive basically everywhere he's been. I know he was with the Bears, the Packers, and then most recently with the Texans. Once again, you're talking about a third safety. Depending on how Weaver envisions utilizing Holland and Poyer, whether or not he sees one of those guys being more versatile in the box or whatnot, kind of how Kyle Hamilton was used with the Ravens. You kind of need that third guy, whether you want to put him in the box or you want another deep safety to fill that role. And then the last guy on this list is John Johnson. You could look to reunite him with Jalen Ramsey. Once again, this position is really specific to the needs that Weaver's looking for in his third safety position. I don't know if he views Holland and Poyer as the guys he wants to stay back, or if he views Holland as that chess piece that he can move around, which Holland can do, and then have another guy that can be in the back. So it really comes down to how Weaver perceives that position, but there's so many good names that the Dolphins should have no issue looking for a good option. Now, on to the next need is wide receiver 3, which the Dolphins have shown clear intent that they want to sign an upgraded receiver at that third spot. Obviously, starting with Odell Beckham Jr., who we've already had in the building, seems like the Dolphins are sticking to their price tag. If Odell gets more money, then they're going to let him walk, but if he fits within their price, then he's going to be a Miami Dolphin, and I think it'd be a great signing. I didn't realize he had as much juice as he did, but he showed a lot of good things on the highlights that I saw of him. Next guy, Hunter Renfrow, perfect slot option. I don't know what they're looking for, if they want an outside guy or an inside guy, but Hunter Renfrow, third and Renfrow, always seems to get open when you need him. He's had a couple down years, but was also an awful offense with Josh McDaniels, who didn't utilize him correctly. Michael Thomas, another option. Obviously, he's struggled to stay on the field for the past 5 years now, but if he were to stay on the field, he's a big body, helps provide a different skill set for the Miami Dolphins, but would do very good in this offense. Tyler Boyd, another slot option that would be to the benefit of the Miami Dolphins, can get open in that kind of space and would be a good third option for Tua Tagovailoa in this offense. And then the last receiving option, which a lot of people I've seen on Twitter mentioning, and I think would be a great fit, is Josh Reynolds. He'd be coming over from the Lions, where he's been productive, especially as just a third receiver. That's what you're looking for. He's spent time in the Rams offense, so you know what you're going to be asked of since he's been in that offense before. And that means he also has that blocking prowess that you look for in this offense, especially in the slot. You got to be able to block some linebackers and defensive ends, and we know Josh Reynolds can provide that. On to the second to last position, and that is defensive tackle. Obviously, the Dolphins have been in the pursuit of trying to replace Christian Wilkins with a group effort, and they've done their best. They've signed about 5 different defensive linemen, from Benito Jones to, I'm blanking on all of the other people, but they've signed a bunch of people, and I think there's a chance that through that competition, they'll be able to get a solid rotation, because once again, you're not going to have one star player to play next to Zach Sealer. It's going to be a rotation of guys, and that's okay. As long as they find a solid rotation of maybe an early down guy and someone who's better in the pass rush and can rotate those guys in and out, I'm pretty confident that they might already have that group, but it doesn't hurt to potentially continue to add to that. Some names to look out for. These first 2 are going to be young guys that haven't necessarily proven themselves yet, but have some upside as they were taken pretty early in the draft. Marlon Davidson, I know he was in Atlanta, I think most recently in Tennessee, or maybe he was never in Atlanta, but he was most recently in Tennessee. I think he's 25 years old. Next guy's also in Tennessee, Ross Blacklock. He's more of a bigger guy, if I'm not mistaken. I remember him coming out. Once again, young guy, hasn't necessarily proven himself, but he's still out there. The defensive line market's pretty barren based off the free agents that are currently out there, so they don't have a ton of options. And then the last option is Calais Campbell, the mayor. He's 38 years old, drafted in 2008, which is insane. Back when the Dolphins had drafted Jake Long, so that's insane to think about. He's got 6.5 sacks last year in Atlanta, which is quite impressive. For his age, he would honestly be a good fit. I don't know if he crossed over with Weaver in Baltimore, but bringing Calais Campbell in as a veteran defensive lineman, I honestly am a big fan of if it's for the right price, which I don't think his market should be big. Considering how old he is, but I would love Calais to be a Miami Dolphin. And now on to the last position of need, and in my opinion, the most important position of need for the Miami Dolphins, and that is the guard position. Now, the Dolphins have brought back Isaiah Wynn, which is a very good signing, but we don't know where he's at in his health. And I would love for the Dolphins to address this position, so that way you feel more confident in your offensive line heading into the draft. So currently our starting guards is Isaiah Wynn and then Robert Jones at right guard. I would love to bring in one more guy to at minimum compete with Wynn or Jones for a starting guard position, because competition breeds excellence, and that means you're getting a quality play because he beat out the other guy, and then you have that depth behind him. So starting with Miami Dolphins favorites for everyone I've seen, especially myself, Laken Tomlinson, I know Jets fans hate him, which I'm glad about because honestly, the Jets offense these past couple of years has been putrid. The way they've handled their offensive coaching has been putrid. They brought him in when he was a scheme fit, and then they changed schemes to Nathaniel Hackett, who has ridden Aaron Rodgers' coattails into coaching positions. And obviously, you're going to struggle when you have bad coaching, and it seems like a mess over there. So I think Laken Tomlinson reuniting with Mike McDaniel in the Shanahan system in that zone running scheme would benefit tremendously. Shouldn't cost too much money as he's had some struggles with the Jets, and he's been durable the past couple of years. So I think bringing him in to compete for a starting guard job would be good for the Miami Dolphins. Next guy on this list is Andrews Pete, who's been a Saint basically his entire career. I don't know how much of a scheme fit he is, I'm not going to lie, but usually the Saints are known for being kind of versatile in their rushing attack, so I don't see why he wouldn't fit the scheme. Good overall player that's been in the league for a long time, and I think he'd be a good, once again, competition piece. Next guy on this list is Dalton Risner, most notably with the Vikings, signed midway through and had a very good time with the Vikings, and the Viking scheme very similar to the Miami Dolphins scheme in terms of the structure of it being a zone rushing scheme. O'Connell being from McVay, which is all under the same tree, and Risner had a great year. I would love to see the Dolphins sign him. It kind of seems like guard prices are underpriced and he's holding out to kind of get a fair deal. That's why he didn't sign until halfway through the season. So he shouldn't be too expensive, but he also wants to be valued like he should be. So it should be interesting to see where he lands. Cody Whitehair, previously of Chicago, he's had some very good seasons. I'm sure by the time of his age now, I think he's 32, that he's regressed a little bit, but he's still a solid name that you could put out there. And once again, all we're looking for is competition because I feel confident. I feel solid with our current offensive line of Wynn, Brewer, and then Robert Jones in the interior. But I just want one more guy to at minimum compete with those guys that you feel confident that the winner of that position is the best man for that job and that you'd feel confident with them starting week in, week out. So that's all I'm looking for. And the last guy on this list, former Miami Dolphin, Connor Williams. Obviously, it sucks. It seems like his ACL injury was much worse than we initially had thought. He's just rehabbing, focusing on that. There was reports that he considered retiring, but it's probably one of those deals where it wasn't just the ACL that got torn, probably the meniscus or the MCL. So he's got a big rehab in front of him. He's just focused on that. But bringing back Williams to potentially play guard because we signed Brewer to be a center, and it's based off Brewer's size. I would like to keep him at that position, and Connor Williams has that flexibility to play guard, and then say Brewer goes down with injury, you can move Williams back to center or however they want to structure it. But Connor Williams is a perfect scheme fit as we saw for the past 2 years in Miami. I would love to see him remain a Miami Dolphin, but who knows with his injury and his price where he lands. But I would like to see him remain a Miami Dolphin, and if he was our starting guard, I'd feel very good about that because I'm a big fan of Connor Williams, and I would love to see him remain in aqua and orange. Appreciate you guys for watching. Comment your thoughts. Who do you want to see the Dolphins target on this free agency list? The big thing for me is I really want the Dolphins to have the ability to head into this draft and take best player available, and I think they're really close. I honestly think if they sign a guard, I'd feel confident they can go best player available because at that point, you have zero clear holes. It's more of depth issues, which you can address a good receiver in the second or third round. Same thing with basically everything else on this list between center and whatnot. And that frees you up in that first round to then take a quality premium position that isn't necessarily a big hole, but you can groom that player to then fill future needs, whether that's offensive tackle, which is I'm a big fan of, or the edge position. But I really want the Dolphins to set themselves up in that position, and I think they're very freaking close. I think Chris Greer has done a tremendous job this free agency, but appreciate you guys for watching. Like and comment to help the channel grow. Until next time, fins up.